you know this hymn? Anyone? Okay, can you please? Yeah, we are going to say it in English after a while, but now we're going to say it in Arabic and after then in English, okay? Right, let's start. Thank you.
In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, one God, Amen. So today we're having the second session. The first session was yesterday with our glorious couple meeting. And I believe today for us as a servant, we're having very special mission. What can we do as servant in all the challenges we facing with our boys and girls whom we serve? what is our role as servant, how we can handle situation. Because there is a truth from the first day, maybe like arrived here to Auckland, and I started to feel really that God is working through here, and really that we can gain a lot from here, love to Christ, from here, love to the Coptic Orthodox Church, from the mission that we all really need to think about why we are here in New Zealand, what we do as servants, how we can deal with some difficult, cases in our service. Should we get upset when we find a boy or a girl that is giving us hard time? How we can deal with this kind of conflict, or what is in the world, what our boys and girls are facing every day in their life, how we can deal with all of that. So Exodus youth works are dealing with all kind of cases, in the society. We are an amazing group, and I'm sure that for us as servants, we can gain a lot in our service. So we pray that God will guide, the lead for, like this session for us as servants to learn how to deal with, like cases like this in our church, and for us as parents also. May the Lord guide you through the Holy Spirit. In the name of the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit, one God, amen.
Because just walked in the door and Tina said, come here, come here. So Kiro and Tina have been married a couple of years, and they worked here in New Zealand in refuges, really rough refuges. So they know New Zealand. And they just came from a fishing trip by the skin of your teeth. So when I said I was going to New Zealand, Kira said, oh, can I come? I go, sure. And then his next question was, can I go fishing? I said, sure. Okay.
There was fish, but there was no sharks. So, because I promised the congregation I'm going to give them fish. I can go to the fish market.
You're coming with us? Yesterday I was speaking out there saying we're coming with fish.
We caught, but literally the shark is literally at the water top of the shark. We got the head. We actually got
Soup. We're having soup. So they've been thrown in the deep end. They've just driven, I think, 3 hours. Yeah. All right. So I'm going to talk, and that gives you 10 minutes, and then we're going to swap a little bit. And then hopefully we have an open dialogue. So Tina and Kiro are servants in the church. Yeah, don't put them away. Make them work. So Tina's a registered nurse, and she's going to be talking about self-harm, and that includes addiction, because drugs really are self-harm. So we're going to cover that, or Tina will cover that. Kiro's an interesting fellow. So when he was about, I don't know, 19 or something, we travelled to South Africa because we have youth trips. And he liked it so much that I think he went up again, and he was studying in university. And Tina was there too. Later. So they're both South African servants as well. And then Kiro said, I want to go back. So we went back and we left him there for how long? 8 months. So now he came back to Sydney, became a social worker with the government, and it was until I headhunted him recently, senior case manager for most of New South Wales, pretty serious child protection stuff. So whenever I would have a problem, so the disciple has become the teacher, and so I give him a call and go, oh my goodness, what do I do with this? And he sorts it out. Until recently, when I'm almost turning 60, I thought if I don't recruit somebody, and in my mind for years it's been him, we're not going to be sustainable. So then a negotiation started that took 6 months. And so Kira's been with us 4 months now. And that means I can do other things because we're so busy. And he takes all of most of the cases. Most. And I've got about 4 since I've been here. And not from here, back home. So he'll be talking about child protection and mandatory reporting. What does that mean? He'll be talking about signs. Both Tina and Kira will talk about signs to look out for. What are we looking for in our young people? And hopefully early years, before things get bad, early intervention. And then I'm just going to sort of introduce with some servant ideas, basically. So if we can make this like more like we were at the end of the day yesterday, lots of talking. I'd like to know what servants are represented. So we're talking hands up and sort of what do you do really quickly in the church? What's your service? What years?
I teach primary pharmacists.
Primary, so just before they launch into the deep. Yes. Yeah. Where's Faddy, the techno guy? There he is. So I really like this video, and when I've had a rough day, if I'm not watching something that's a bit tense, I do watch this quite often. And the church is a ship. It's built that way, the way it's designed. And a boat is not designed to stay in harbour. It's meant to launch out into the deep, not quoting anyone we know. So if your service is like, and I'm going to show you another video after that just to sort of get us moving. If it isn't challenged, then something's wrong. So it should look like this all the time. And you know when you get, anyone gone bungee jumping? Yes, you know that adrenaline? This is something, it's a bit of a hint. Young people that take drugs get a good kick. They get a high. Now, service can be like that. That is adrenaline pumping. And service should be exactly like that. And if our young people are not introduced early enough to giving and taking in the service, they'll fill that gap, that adrenaline junkie gap, with something else. So as servants, we have to be very creative and very forward-thinking and coming up with ways how a 5-year-old, a 4-year-old, a year 7 person, or a 14-year-old can serve. Because if they don't experience it and they don't get that thrill, they're going to find it somewhere else. And after many years of being a servant, I think that's where the problem is. So Kira and I and Tina have been in and out of Africa. I'm clocking 50, I think it's 53. You're a couple of times, Tina's been a couple of times. And we've got people that now, they came with us in year 9 and 10 from the Coptic school. One of them, actually another girl that came while she was in uni, she's now in Darfur for her 2nd tour of duty. She'll be there for 1 year, which I heard from yesterday. She's having a great time. Not. Another one, all public education, international public health. And that all started from experiencing Service, raw, rough, scary, adrenaline pumping service. And do not fear. It happens more than 365 times in the Bible. Do not fear. Do not fear. God is with us. So we can play this without the music, and I just want a little bit, it's dramatic. So that's good. And any day at Exodus, I think Kira can vouch for me and grab the, I think this is any day at Exodus, personally. Yeah, 100%. So we dive deep. We're always under this, what's the word? It's like we don't even catch our breath. Sunday school now, when I reflect back, and we all reflect back, it was like being in the harbour. It was like you were attached to the wharf. But we are called to go to the deep. And we have, for every youth that sits in our chair, in our pews, in our churches, maybe in Sydney, maybe there are 10 that are not in the building. 10. So we get one and we lose 10. So, you know, the ship obviously is a ship, it's strong. So the first thing for us as servants, we must prepare and make sure that we are that ship, we are that strong to endure storms. Because where we are to launch is into the deep. I'll get Fatty to swap the other video so you'll know where I'm going. So, okay, they come on Sunday, you tick off, you give a lesson, you might ring them during the week. That's the easy stuff. That's what we're supposed to be doing. But who is launching into the deep to retrieve those who might be up to here? To be able to do that, in another life, I was a lifesaver a long time ago. And you've got to be able to swim. So your job is to learn to swim in all weather. 9/11 is a very good example of what service looks like. On 9/11 in New York, everyone in that building was running out, except for the rescuers. They were running in. They were equipped, they were trained, they were fearless, they were courageous, and they believed in what they were doing. And that's something as servants that we have to ask ourselves, do we really believe, are we really passionate about this business, about saving? Or have we become lukewarm, where we just go to Sunday school, we tell the story of Noah, tick it off, someone didn't show up, okay. Maybe 1 week we don't call them, second week we don't call them, third week, well, we'll give them a call. It becomes routine. And the next video don't take offense. I'm this person too, believe me. Kira will tell you I don't do what I'm supposed to do. And I watch this too all the time, so I don't fall into complacency. Okay, thank you.
Jesus, I am so excited today. It's like I woke up and thought today is the day to get working for Jesus.
Kat, I'm so excited to find someone who's ready to take action and get things done.
Oh man, I am that girl.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I've got something perfect for you. So let's get started. What are you doing? Stand up. Remember, we were going to take action.
Yeah, but this is where I always sit.
Right, but I need more than this.
Oh, I know what you're getting at. Okay, Jesus, how much do you want? $50? Is that enough?
Oh, that's not what I meant.
Oh, all right. Well, 100 then. You drive a hard bargain. Okay, but you might not want to catch this till next Friday. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
There you go.
Okay, Kat, really, I do think it's great that you want to give, but I want you to mentor a younger woman.
Ooh, yeah, right. Well, Jesus, I'm not really into teaching people and stuff. I mean, I don't really get into that.
Okay, you know that woman at the office, Amy?
Yeah.
I want you to take her out to lunch. Tell her about me.
Well, Amy is different. I mean, really different,
I know, but she needs to know about me.
And I can tell the people at the church to call her. I mean, they get paid to do things like that.
I want you to do that.
Jesus, because I just don't feel comfortable doing that.
No, Kat. The problem is, you're too comfortable.
A bit of a hard lesson, yes? Have we or do we sometimes fall into a comfortable couch with service? And if we're not in the ship amongst the water, you have to say, well, are we really serving or are we just ticking the box off? Yesterday we were talking about 2,000 years of servants. So behind you stretches back to 42 AD and St. Mark, who left his mother in Libya and walked over the borders to the most unlikely bunch of people that are now before me, in all their glory, the head of Christendom, but once upon a time you were pagans, great pagans. And he dared to walk to Egypt for you. When Passion Week comes around, and we all see Good Friday and we are very mournful and we hear Christ's words from the cross, we are touched. But do we see every single youth, every single child, every single congregation member who is not here in those gaps, do we look at them and say, this is the Messiah that is hurting? So today, no one is, I don't even think Tina would have seen leprosy, Hansen's disease. Today's leper is someone who might be addicted to drugs. It might be someone with a mental illness. So if you get someone that has severe schizophrenia and he behaves differently to you and you don't understand it, you tend to step away and go, oh, you know, we can't deal with that person. Or a young person with, for whatever reason, a bad behavior. We tend to shy away. But that's not what Christ did. He wants us to be more compassionate to those. So we do the Sunday school lesson, and then we go and we find the Christ that is in the gutter, because that's where he is. He's here, but he always came for the lepers. He always came for the broken. And this is, if we are so privileged to have been called to service, we must venture into very rough water. And just hang on, everything will be fine. So, how are you feeling about your service? So I'm going to stop talking and we pass this around and you tell us, let us share, because we're thinking the same thing. What's the toughest thing about the service for you? What's the toughest bit? Everything's good? Oh, yes. There you go, brave. I'm going to talk till 6 o'clock and then I'm going to...
Hello. So I have served youth and younger children, and I have seen over the years that we become not relevant to the kids. We as a church, we become very traditional and we are not relevant to the outside world. And that's why the kids find the pleasure and the things that make them happy and more understanding and relevant outside the church. So what we are suffering in the service is to make it exciting and more relevant.
Okay, so that means in the Bible, when in the New Testament, when the apostles were sent to jail and they were released and they stood on the steps of the prison and they were told, say nothing, get out, but say nothing. And they said, how can we not speak of things that we have seen? Even after being in prison in that century, they were willing to keep talking. So the question is, are we selling Christ as boring? Yes. I was speaking to a family yesterday that said that their particular school that their children go to, and you know they're in year, I think you would call it year 6 or 7, and they feed the poor. Now, why aren't our kids doing that? Kids need to feel that they have a job and a service. Why do we wait? You don't need a theological degree to hand over, to make sandwiches and send them to food van. Do you have a food van service here? Oh, well, there you go. Someone should start that. And the rest of the community are you've seen the fires in New South Wales? There was never a post on Facebook, Coptic Orthodox Church feeding firemen. It was the Islamic community, women, amazing people, amazing Australians out there doing good. Why? We've got a real bad problem with just serving us here. St. John Chrysostom says that outreach is the backbone, it's actually the spinal column for all other services. So the ribs, so you've got the outreach. So if we can talk about Christ and be excited, then Sunday school is good, youth is good, outings are good, seniors are good, everything's good inside. And it holds the church up as an exciting place. For me, I'm not brought up in the church. What brought me here was that I went to school with a Coptic person that shone so brightly, I didn't even know what she had, but I knew whatever it was, I wanted it. Didn't know the name, but I knew she had something that I didn't have. Are we doing that to the outside world? But let's just start with inside. Our children should be serving. Yes, they go to Sunday school. But there's no reason why a year 7 girl couldn't be making the craft for year 4, making nice lambs with cotton wool, and she spends Saturday night working at the back here. She feels needed, and she's excited about, what am I going to do next week? I'm planning something. But if we say, no, you're too little, I mean, look at these walls of a cloud of witnesses, and some of them are children. Where are the Abanubs of today? What are their names? Do they belong to you? Are they yours? Or do we say, no, you're too young? We wait, and then we miss the boat. So that's, if Christ is boring, you're not even getting me here. And there's a lot more excitement happening outside. So how does that look? Maybe we need a little bit, and I hate to use the word reform, but somebody needs to get excited about Christ. And 2,000 years of history, your ancestors have been very excited. Up until 2 years ago, when 21 youth in Libya, no one knew their name. They weren't special, with all respect. They were there in Libya making money for their families back in Egypt. And then suddenly, they're written as icons in our homes. They were just average people, but they lived their faith, and that's what we're missing. We're good at theology, but we're bad at practicing it, and not just for us. If we just do us, and the kids here know, don't worry about those. He'll witness to this. Phone call, Exodus, 2 weeks ago. The woman didn't know me. So she picks up, she's speaking in Arabic, and بكلم شوية, all right? But she said, what church do you go to? In Arabic, I said, Mary Burgess. So she thought I was Egyptian. Big mistake. Never again. She goes on to say, I've had 4 children. The last one, the 17-year-old girl, my husband kicked her out of the house. And you know what it is? You know why? Because of those dirty Australians. And I thought, oh my gosh, this woman should never see my face. I said, somebody called Kira is going to call you. And he'll talk to you, and his Arabic is better than mine. So when our kids hear that sort of, it didn't bother me at all, because I understand where she's coming from. So when our children hear that we discriminate, when we have conditional love, yes, we look after them. But if God sent his son to you, and St. Mark's mother sent her son to you, then there has to be some sacrifice somewhere, and it shouldn't start with your kids, it should start with you. And then your children will be so strong that then they will go to us. Because you are special. Not because your mother says that, because you are special to the world. And if you don't pass this 2,000 year of history and of excitement of Christ to the next generation, This church will be sold in 50 years, like the Catholic Church down the road. And there'll be no one to blame other than ourselves because we made Christ look boring.
Can I just add to that? In my experience in Sydney, we're a very traditional church. We've done things in a certain way for a long time. And I think for us, for the servants of the church, with the priests of the church, for the church in the lands of immigration, for New Zealand, for Australia, for Europe, for America, I think we need to get a lot better at understanding the culture we're in and the society we're in and figuring out how we can show Christ in a more exciting way. And I think one thing we need to do, we need to differentiate and understand the difference between what we cannot change, what we cannot play around with, what we can't go near. We're an apostolic church, we have sacraments, we have a specific liturgical practice. We have certain things in our church that we cannot touch. But we have other cultural practices and other ways of doing things that we can have a discussion about and see if we can alter or do it differently to meet the current need. And I think in this day and age, in this era, I'm talking about Sydney, I'm guessing it might be the same here, maybe not, but our kids are presented with a lot of, very appealing things to them. There's music and there's drugs and there's socializing, there's Fortnite. Do you guys have the game Fortnite? There's social media, there is so
New
many,
Zealand.
yeah, so many things presented to our kids. And I think if we don't understand that and if we don't think of creative ways to counteract that, we're going to have a problem. But we do need to understand things we cannot touch and cultural things that we can negotiate on and do things a bit differently. And I think, traditionally for us, we have our Sunday morning liturgy, we have our Saturday night Ashaya, we have our Friday night youth meeting, we have maybe a Bible study in the middle of the week. And these are things that are needed and they're sacramental and we can't touch that stuff. But there's other services and other ways of reaching and engaging our youth that in a Coptic church we may not typically do. And I think between the servants and the priests of the church is figuring out how we can reach our youth in a different way or in a way that we're on an equal playing field with what they're being presented with outside.
And go beyond these gates. It isn't about we invite them, you get really creative and you have an art class at church. Take Christ to the street. Take Christ to where they are. So have squash meet every week. If God is who He is, He plays squash. I've got Australian friends, and this is really radical, and I'm not suggesting you do that, but I've got Aussie Christian friends, and they call it pub ministry. So for me, I'm brought up in the pub. I'm brought up like the pub is like this to me, exactly the same. We were in Singleton looking at something, a convent recently, and we had to eat. And in Singleton, in New South Wales, there's nothing to eat. And the only place was a pub. I walked in straight away, like straight through the doors. Hey mate, where's the food? The Aussies are like that, and they're taking Christ into those places. But we are so narrow-minded. We do mission. We go to, China and Africa and wherever. But you don't need to buy a ticket. Our youth are in those places here in this country. I actually want to go to Queen Street, and I'm sure we'll bump our kids there. I'm sure of it. But do we take this place there? No. Do you want to jump up here? Because you can sort of jump in any time. Come, we start moving. So I just want to say, outside of the little, that's the church. Outside of normal service, that's where the magic happens. That's where, you see, all this is doable. It's all doable. It's like somebody in Africa who has, they don't have access, let's say, in the middle of South Africa to healthcare. But they will come and say, please, can we have some oil? And they believe because God is the only thing they have. But here we think, oh, we'll do the lesson, we'll do this craft. We rely on ourselves. But if you venture outside of the boat, like Peter, get out of the boat, yes, it's scary and you may drown a little bit. But then you begin to rely on him. Every day, several times, impossible stories, beyond impossible, beyond horrible. And then God will just, and we go, even the non-Christians, so we have non-Christians working with us, and we do that deliberately because eventually they go, oh, that's your God. It's got to be because no one else could have done that. They get excited. We go, oh, yeah, it's God. Pray about it. But they'll go, Pablo, who's from Brazil, he'll go, oh, you don't need to tell me, I know. It's God, right? He just did that. And we've got a truck that goes by, the manna truck. It's a cake company. But whenever we're short of money, we saw it in the beginning, manna from heaven. And so even the non-Egyptians go, manna from heaven just passed. We have a bell, and they ring it. They go, it's okay, God will take care of the bills this week. It's witnessing the impossible. The impossible. Services like, how can he be boring? How can he be just, yeah, God? He can't be, because he is God. And we need to expose our kids to that. Jump up and keep talking. Because he hears me talk all day. And trusting in the slow work of God. Yes, there are miracles, but why this organisation that he started, him and his mates, 20 years ago, they called it Exodus, because a lot of the young people had wandered off into the wilderness, and they said, let's call it Exodus so we can walk around with them and get them to the promised land. We're 20 years in, so I'm figuring he's got the next 20. Yes, the poor thing. He deserves it. It's a long journey, and you need to be fit like that. You can't be a little boat. You've got to be a ship. So you need to come here. You need to fill up. You need to look after your spiritual life, because you should be in deep waters. Because if you aren't going, tell me who is. It's not the Congregationalists that are not here. It's not them. It's not the neighbour next door. It's you, because you are the servants. So you need to swim really hard. Jump in. There's a war on. That's my point.
So we wanted to, given that the context and the people that are joining us today in the service of the church, we wanted to discuss some things that you may come across in your service as servants, but are not your typical sort of mainstream things that you'll do or you'll learn about as a Sunday school servant or a church servant that you may come across. So one of the things Deb asked me to talk about, so my history is child protection. So the equivalent, I know the name's changed, so if someone knows the new name, they can tell me, but the previous 6 here, child youth and services. Okay, so that's okay. Yes. So I worked for 12 years with the equivalent of 6 in child protection in Sydney. So one thing we wanted to discuss with you guys, and I guess understand from you here as well, this context, because it could be different to Sydney, but we have something, the legislation in New South Wales, we have something called mandatory reporting. Does anyone know what mandatory reporting is?
I think it's just reporting any abuse or any, if you notice, like something like school education, for example, you have to report it at once and you have to limit them.
So mandatory reporting, the legislation states that depending on what capacity you're in, you are mandated, you are required to, by law, to report any child abuse or neglect that you're aware of. And that's not just paid employees, that's volunteers too. So the legislation in New South Wales, priests, clergy, Sunday school servants, youth workers, volunteers, not paid or paid, anyone in their capacity working with children is mandated by law, and you're legally liable if you have information that a child is at risk, being abused or being neglected, and you do not report, you're held accountable by law. Okay? I did a little bit of research, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't believe mandatory reporting is a legal obligation here in New Zealand. It's not. Yeah. Not a legal obligation. So school teachers paid or not paid volunteer workers here, you're not legally liable to report.
Something happened at school, if we notice any marks on a student arm, or we have to report it without even asking, so we have to. So we have a pastoral, like the person in charge is the principal, so she is the person who has to ring Oranga Tamarika 64, and we have to report her, and we have to dig deep and visit the house.
What about volunteering at Sunday school service?
Yeah, to be honest, no. I think we're not doing it in the church, but all the schools, even neglects, we have to report it. Yes, she is going to be instructed to be reported. So the person in charge, like if something happened after that, or we heard about something, or yes, I told the teacher, or we noticed something, and it did get worse, this person can, yeah.
So if I can jump in, why would we bring this topic up here? And it's linked to how we can protect our kids, how we don't lose them. So here's the scenario. If there is some sort of trauma happening at home, domestic violence, the kid is suffering that, and the church stands by the protection, the Christ in its life, in that child's life, and does nothing. In a very short time, what do you think his attitude will be towards God for not protecting him and not dealing with the problem? He will refuse. If your father, the representative of Christ himself in the church, in the home, is causing you abuse, then God himself is allowing it. And it's not happening so much anymore, but we've had a murder in the last 6 months. That's not even 6 months, because the court case is tomorrow, Monday. Those children, 3 sons, witnessed for too long the bear your cross scenario. And getting them back into the church now that their mother is dead, and she was stabbed 35 times, and you could not recognize her face. She was a nurse. She'd finished serving all day. She got into the car park, and her husband, who had been separated from her for a little period of time, which is a very dangerous time for that scenario, waited for her. And she was unidentifiable. A friend of, actually someone who works with us, was the nurse on duty, just by coincidence. And so the 3 sons lost their mother, but lost their father too, because he's going to jail for a very long time. And of course, how do you begin to heal those children? The eldest is 23, 24, but the youngest is 19, and he's not talking. Of course not. So how do we begin to reunite or reconnect them with their Creator if the establishment that represents that in their lives did nothing? So mandatory reporting, or at least bringing things out into the open, whether it's, we have to stop judging. We have to stop it. Okay, some of our children may fall into mental health. Some of them may fall into addiction. God forbid, but somebody, because of statistics, is going to experience something pretty horrendous. And why should they do that alone? Why should they carry that weight alone? Because they can't speak? Because we will judge that family? It's God's grace that it isn't yours. And He has chosen that family, not chosen, but allowed it so that we can work this together. Because if we can't look after our kids, how is the Christ in the community of New Zealand going to be witnessed if we can't even do it in this place? We can't even talk about pornography. We can't talk about addiction. We can't talk about domestic violence because they're all haram. They don't exist. Let's put them under the carpet. So as servants, you have to identify, and Tina's going to talk about what to look for perhaps in a young person that is harming themselves. Because this is the beginning of depression. It's the beginning of a great lifetime of trauma perhaps. We just don't go, Malish, Insha'Allah, Bukra, IBM. It'll get better.
So I guess it was just a conversation, and a lot of this stuff is, starting a discussion for them, the church servants with Abuna to sort of discuss this stuff and figure out the best way forward for your congregation. But I guess in regards to reporting, so child abuse and neglect, if you come across it in your service, it's something that, again, my opinion, and I could be wrong, but from my experience and my opinion, there's a cultural barrier for us as Egyptians, as Coptic Egyptians from Egypt with a specific culture. A lot of things are taboo. A lot of things are not discussed. We're a private culture. What happens in our houses, we don't want to air out our dirty laundry and public knowledge, and we're not that keen to go forward and say, hey, I've got a problem, I need help, hey, where can I go to get help? Things are embarrassing, things people shouldn't know about. So I think as a culture, we're a little bit private compared to some other cultures. And in things like child abuse and neglect and mental health, this becomes a real problem because we don't end up dealing with things in a way that's efficient and in a way that's successful and in a way that overcomes things. And we may try to deal with it and we may try to approach it, but in a bare minimum way. And unfortunately, correct me if I'm wrong, a lot of the time, this stuff falls on the priests. So for us culturally, anytime we have a problem, usually the first person we'll go to is our confession father, and we'll speak to Abuna. A lot of the time, and speaking to other priests in Sydney, and they've confirmed this, a lot of the time the person, when they speak to the priest, begs them to not say anything or not do anything. Yeah, I'm happy to talk to you, I'll come have confession, help me, I'll take your advice, but please let's keep, this conversation between us. And the poor priests have to deal with this and have to manage this. And the issue we have in Sydney, and I'm guessing it's the same here, our priests don't have the capacity. Our priests are married, and our priests have children. We're not Catholic. They've got children, they've got a wife, they've got their own families, and they've got service, they've got liturgies, they've got sacraments, they've got hospital visits, they've got visitations, they've got, meetings with community members and, government people. And the role of a Coptic priest in our community does not have the capacity, even if they have the expertise. Again, no disrespect to priests, but a lot of them may not have the expertise or the knowledge in this area. Even for the ones that do, if they were previous, psychological person, counsellor, psychologist, psychiatrist, or even if they have the experience, they may not have the capacity. So again, I think discussions need to be had in our church in this day and age with the problems we have in our society now that are possibly different to previously. Mental health, drug and alcohol abuse. I got into child protection 12 years ago. I was very naive. I was gobsmacked at the reports that I was receiving on Coptic families, people that were in my community. The amount of times I had to declare a conflict of interest and leave a meeting because the family that was being discussed, I knew them personally, and I had to declare that because it's a conflict of interest. And I knew these people, and I was shocked. And knowing these people, and knowing them, some of them fairly well, could not believe that these problems were with these families. And in general, could not, I was naive to the fact that these problems exist in our community. I've had domestic violence, I've had sexual abuse within our Coptic communities, a lot of neglect, a lot of mental health with the parents, drug use with the parents, everything. And then when you think about it, we are not immune from these problems. Why would we be? Why would our community not have these problems? The devil does not discriminate. The devil, I think, will, attack and plague our community more because of our faith. So I guess, these things are present, and if you come across them, I think discussions need to be had and an agreement and an agreement on what the best way forward is. It may not be to call SIFs and get police involved and tear apart families. I'm not suggesting that. But I think we need to have processes and protocols within our service and consistency, that we're all practicing the same way. If one of our kids in our Sunday school class, we know there's an issue, there should be an agreed process, a protocol that we follow to make sure that we're not making things worse, but to make sure that a vulnerable child that doesn't have a voice, that could be in a very bad situation, is having their needs met.
I agree with you, Kiro, and I tell you the truth about some, like situations. For us as Coptic Orthodox community, a lot of cases, like some people, if they approach the priest, they reach to the priest for guidance. But the truth is that the family knows that this case of their sons and daughters does not need just a priest. A priest will pray, let me give this number one. He will guide according to the ability, but always Abuna will advise the family to take it further. But unfortunately, with a lot of families, they don't like to take their sons to psychiatric or anything like that because they think their sons and daughter are okay. And it will be a shame if someone knows that my son or my daughter need kind of treatment because I believe they are okay. So our problem is in the community. As Egyptian, we scare when it comes to psychologists, psychiatric, and we don't want to touch this one. Even the parents sometimes, you find some parents need that. Wives sometimes need that, but they don't face it. They don't think that they're doing something wrong, and that's what we're facing as a priest. For me, like when someone comes with a case, I always refer them to specialists. I'm not ashamed to say that, hey guys, that is my ability as a priest. I stop at this level. This case needs someone else. So I hope that for us as a servant, or even families, not feel ashamed to say, no, I need further treatment so I can do it in the right way, not to rely in the church to solve the church will pray.
And look, and to be fair, I think this problem is not entirely our fault. Again, my opinion, and I could be wrong, and a lot of you would know better than me, but from my understanding and my experience, again, our culture, we are behind a lot of the world in this area. Egypt, as a country, and as a government, and as a community, is in this field of psychiatry and psychology and mental illness, and the practice and the cultural view and the perspectives in this area is very, very behind the Western world. So for us, Muslims born and bred, that's the culture and that's the era that we grew up in, that this is foreign to us. Psychology and psychiatry is very foreign to us. We don't understand it, we don't see its benefits, we haven't experienced it, we don't know a lot about it, and there's always a negative connotation to it. If someone's going to go see a psychologist, you've got a big problem. If someone's going to see a marriage counsellor, you're on the brink of divorce. It's, and this is our culture, unfortunately. So for us as servants, just being conscious of that. Again, historically, and I could be wrong, my opinion, historically for us as a Coptic church, and because of our faith, prayer was pretty much the be-all and end-all of every problem. We pray about it. We go to church, we have communion, we do matanyas, and we pray and we pray and we have faith that God will solve it. And that is 100% correct. We pray and we pray about everything and any problem, and we don't stop praying and we don't stop having communion. But equally to that, God, the God that we believe in and the God that we have faith in, God gave us a brain, and God gave us intelligence, and God gave us the ability to progress. No one has a problem with going to get medicine, scientific medicine, not in addition to prayer, scientific medicine when you're sick. No one has a problem with going to an operation. No one has a problem with, accessing all these things. Psychotherapy and psychology is the exact same. It's just not for the physical body, it's for the mind.
We received are there any doctors in the house? Which is really good in the Coptic church, you get half a dozen at least. So we received a study only a couple of weeks back from the United States, and it found that of every 10 people suffering from schizophrenia, 2 were missing a protein. A protein. And they were given that protein, and they got better.
A specific protein.
Yeah.
Something, I don't know what.
It's very new, but if you know anyone that suffers from schizophrenia, this is a miracle. This is like, oh my goodness. In another point, in our community doesn't talk too much about these things, but in Egypt, they're doing much better. I visit rehab centres there that have counsellors, psychologists, and psychiatrists in-house. Magnificent places. And in fact now, which is a shame on us, families here, New Zealand, Australia, are sending their sons and daughters back to Egypt for rehab. Which, one, that's a shame, because how many more cops have issues back there, and our kids are taking those limited spaces there. And they are suffering. They are really suffering. Tramadol in Egypt it's an epidemic. And children and young people die from an overdose. But the Coptic Church, and as far south as Tahta, they have rehab centres, they have servants, mentors. Every client, every young person in the Coptic Church in Tahta with Amba Ashaya has servants and a doctor assigned to that person. And they come in and they lay it on the table and they say, okay guys, you're struggling with addiction. Let us try and work this out together. Not shaming them, not pointing the finger, but saying, because of a reason this has been an issue for you, let us work together. Let's walk in the wilderness until you reach the promised land, until you reach a safe place. So every church, it costs nothing to create a safe space. You could say, if you really had all your young people that have got issues, come in, we're just going to talk about it, and we'll walk together. Those that are missing just may walk in. We started in a park for 2 years. We met in a park. The shisha was cranking up every Monday night.
That was in the very beginning, and that stopped. And
Well, we do search some bags and we find shishas in there, don't we? So it started in a park, and we crashed the shisha party, and we went, hey, we're hanging out with you. We didn't smoke, and you were there the first night. And 5 became 10, became 20, became 40. And then we did about 2 years in the park, rain or shine. We were there from 8 p.m. till 2 a.m. And that's what I mean about being uncomfortable. You're going to miss your shows and you're going to miss dinner, but the buzz you're going to get from retrieving one young person from the jaws of the enemy, it's going to pump you for the next week. You'll say, come on, let's do it again.
It's actually back to the abuse part and the family and the parents. And I feel part of, like you said, the culture is that even if there's an abuse in the family, you feel that the priest, not a good story. But I think the case like what I feel that happened maybe in Sydney is like the priest would still keep the family together, and they don't want someone from outside to intervene so that they don't split and the kids.
Well, they were split for 2 weeks, and unfortunately, and I know this firsthand, it's true, she was sent back.
She was sent back,
and she was killed in the first, advised, I'm not going
advised,
just advised, and she was dead within 2 days or 3 days. It was nothing. So it was going to happen.
Yeah. So.
But yes, but now the government stepped in and said, oh, we're going to train all the servants. And, and that's not the first murder, by the way. We're really into it.
So it's more like, if
not
I say
joking, but we're tired. We've had enough.
Yeah, so I'm feeling like as a servant, if I say something to the outside, they might split this family, and it would be my fault that.
Oh no, you know? But we have to stop thinking like that.
Yeah,
if thieves come in the middle of a mass and try and steal the Eucharist, every male in this church would stop them, destroying the sacrament. So sometimes we have to be honest and say, hey, keeping these two people together is destroying it. It's destroying that which Christ came for. Not a sacrament, but he came for us. And so it takes a lot of wisdom and a lot of education and a lot of gathering together like this to say, we will not stand by and see this because those people are valuable to us. Not judging them. Do not judge. It could be you. You don't know. So we have to really, we have to recalibrate how we see a separation if that's needed. And in some cases, after counselling, Kira does marriage counselling. After some counselling, you can save that sacrament of marriage. It can be saved. It can be. Yeah.
I just want to ask, I don't think our church, or as Father Adam know, that it reached that big stage of abusing. But the problem I faced myself was my 19-year-old son, as an example. Church for him is Sunday. I come to the Mass and thank you very much. I don't want to hear anything about it. You know, he's very good at, service, if you involve him in anything and you push him a little bit, he will come and do it. But I don't want to know anything about it. The other one is 16, he's gone to the same thing. I think we have a lot of that. We have lots of kids that reach some stage. Church for me is Sunday Mass and that's it. This is a problem. Maybe in the future we're gonna, come to that stage. What is your advice to us to protect them? We don't want to leave them that way. Christ become from them just Sunday Mass. And that's it. We need to protect them so they don't reach that stage.
Okay, so when kids are little, we drag them by the hand.
I don't want you to say, sorry about that, but we have to involve them in the sermon and all that.
It's more than that. How? Okay.
How? Step by step.
So when they're little, you bring them by their hand. At some point, your faith in this place, in this system, in this God, must be transferable to them. They have to own it. They have to own it. How is our relationship, ours, as parents and servants? They're watching us all the time. So when we live our lives, that is their first encounter with God. So if we have a healthy relationship, a real one, let's cut all the ticking of the boxes. At home, when the door is closed, how does mum and dad, how do the servants react? What is their relationship with Christ? Again, it gets down to, is he a burden? We have to do this, we have to fast because it's this, and we find siami cheese to compensate, and siami meat to compensate, and siami milk because it's just a burden. They might not say anything for a very long time, but when they get to 19, which is really adulthood, it's not my faith, that's your faith. That's what you wanted. So, I mean, it's a real workshop, what you do. What do you do? I mean, how long have we got?
And again, it takes a discussion and it takes planning and it takes effort. I think a risk, again, my opinion, a risk I see with our Coptic church, we have been doing what we do for a long time, the way we do it for a long time. And we provide that service, and in a way we expect everyone to fit in to that service. We have our times for our services, we have our Friday nights, we have our Sunday liturgies, we have our visitation that we do on Tuesday night, we have our stock standard services, and that's what we provide the congregation. And we expect all the congregational members, from children going to Sunday school to old people going to elderly meetings, we expect them to fit into that structure that we provide. And if they don't, we don't provide them anything else. And that's why getting creative, having a discussion, having a servants planning day, having a workshop day, and individual people
You know, if we can tailor Christ to meet individual needs. This person hasn't come and they only come on Sunday. This person is into this and this and this and this. That's their hobbies. This person is spending their Friday and Saturday night doing this, or he's moved out of home, or he's living with his girlfriend. These are the issues with this specific person. How can we get together and figure out how we can reach that specific person?
Or, for example, just jumping in, we have something called, Exodus runs a open mic, poetry, spoken word. We don't even advertise. We can fill 100 youth at a time, and not just Coptic. We have Muslim young people come and stand. We had a warehouse at the time that had this massive big cross, and the Muslim will stand here and speak, and we're listening, and afterwards they'll come and say, we appreciate this because you don't judge us. We've got video, I've got it here with me in my bag. We interviewed way back in the park why people stop going to church. 2 words come up again and again and again. That answers your question. Hypocrisy and judgment.
And on that, the other risk, and this I don't want this talk to sound like a negative thing on the COB. We're a beautiful church, and to be fair, compared to other denominations, we do a very good job with our youth. We have services as a Coptic church compared to, at least in Sydney, compared to other denominations of Christianity, we do a very good job with our youth. But another risk I see, and in my experience, a lot of the time, we base our child's experience of Christ and of Christianity is solely based on the church, based on the priest, based on deaconship, based on the structures of the church, Sunday school, whatever it is. And a lot of it, for some youth, it doesn't go past that. And the problem that I've seen in Sydney is if all that is based on the church, if something goes wrong with the people of the church, if they see hypocrisy, if they see something the priest's done wrong, fighting or yelling at someone, if they hear of a Coptic monk murdering the bishop in the monastery in Egypt, if they find or see any reason to doubt or disbelieve or hypocrisy or, evil or sin or anything like that, their relationship with Christ is based on this. If this collapses, so does their relationship with Christ.
So it's not Christ, it's the establishment.
It's the establishment. So if that establishment, if they see something wrong with it, if they experience something wrong with it, and that establishment in their head, in their eyes, collapses, so does their relationship with Christ, because that's all it's based on. So again, for us as servants, figuring out 100% everything that church provides, and without it, we've got no chance. So definitely the church being a big part of that. But Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, when church isn't buzzing and isn't happening, what is that youth and that person's relationship with Christ like? What's their knowledge of Christ like? How do they use Christ and connect with Christ the second they step out that door and until they step back into that door the next week? And that's what we need to focus on. And if there's a gap there, that's the gap that we need to pick up and identify and workshop as servants and as the priest of the church. That's what we need to do in every single one of our churches.
We're just going to spread at this moment what we mean about filling the gaps. So I've got the annual report and just looking for these. No, they're the addiction books. Sorry. The little ones. We've got little ones, they're there. So those ones and the big ones. But save a few because we'll need them. So when we say fill the gaps, we're very much Coptic Orthodox. We have a mass at Exodus. Yeah, just pass them around and have a look. These are the fillers of the gaps. So we have a mass in Exodus, and there's an altar and a priest comes in. So we have that side. But then we have these other things that we've been filling for 20 years. And we're filling them now. It says Exodus Youth Works. We actually have 60 seniors. We're now turning into community services. Because they would come in and say, can you help us have a Facebook page so we can see our kids, our grandkids? They don't know how to do that. So we got the young people engaging with the Tetas and Geddurs, making community, finding, it's not just, I hear what you're saying, it's not just about getting them into Sunday school service. The universe is waiting for them. And we have to be creative with our programs so that the kid that plays soccer and nothing else he can help. The kid that builds the websites, he can help. The kid that likes music, he can help. The one that's IT based, he's got purpose. What they're missing is purpose. Because we're trying to fit them into just this, and they're not a deacon, they're not a priest, they're not a Sunday school person. So what have they got? Where is their belonging? And humanity is based on tribalism. If they don't belong, they will belong to another tribe. And so do not fear when we say open to other ideas. We're not saying, teach the Quran. We're not saying that. But we are saying that God can be found. He is omnipresent in everything.
So can we put this in a practical way, please?
Yes.
Can I say something? Yes. Can we please ask every servant? But I know Alfred asked that great question. But can we ask every servant this year who has class to start to dig and see the talents of every individual in his own class? Because sometimes we as servants, we keep complaining and we say we need to change, but the change will come from every class in Sunday school, primary, junior high school, senior high school, university. Every servant will look into his class, the church is empty many days. Can the servant spare time and invite his class to start from that and to start to dig where is the ability and the talents that everyone in his class has? That's how we can start.
Can I give you guys an example? So Exodus, when we started in a park, okay? And I'm not suggesting this will happen here, but it definitely did happen in Sydney, and I can tell you firsthand. We started in a park. It's called Tempe Parks near the airport. There's some water and there's a park, and we started meeting there. And there was, the boys were having their others anyway on Monday nights, we just joined them. We got slammed by the church, we got slammed by the priests, and we got slammed by the servants for this service. And the two accusations were, and very cultural, and this is what we're trying to get across, to think outside the box just a little bit. The two accusations that we're accused of is one, that's a Protestant way of doing things because it's not inside the church, it's outside. It's very Protestant. That's what Protestants do. They meet in homes, they meet in parks. We've got a church, you've got 50 churches in Sydney. Meet in a church, don't meet in a park, you're Protestant. The second thing, again, that's very cultural, is it wasn't headed by a priest. Which priest is running this service? Which priest is standing there to make sure that what's being said is correct? And the issue we had was if any of these young people, sorry Abuna, saw a priest, they would run. If they knew that a priest had come to the Arda in the park and tried to talk to people, whatever, they would not come back the next week. They're the people we're dealing with. They were burnt by the church for whatever experience, for whatever someone said to them about their haircut or their tattoo or whatever reason, they wanted nothing to do with the church. So culturally for us, we have our beautiful church and we have our servants and we have our priests and we administer, that to the people. Outside of that, it's foreign to us. It's foreign to us. So automatically, and again, culturally for us, my opinion, something that's different, it scares us. It's wrong. We're not used to it. It's not how we've been doing things, and it's not how we were raised, and it's not how we were taught. So those two accusations that I understand from a cultural perspective, we've got a church. Why don't we use the church? Why in a park? The kids would not step foot in a church. They will not. Why isn't a priest in charge of this service? Priest is in charge, and we consult with priests. We've got a priest on our board as Exodus. Priests are involved. But, that cohort of kids, we couldn't have a priest physically there giving them a Bible study in a park.
And keep in mind, the service had been blessed by Pope Shenouda and later Pope Tewodros. But some people went, nah, don't care. And lists of bishops come in and out. No.
So just that concept, I guess, is what I'm trying to get across. If it's not sacrilegious, and if it's not against the dogma of the church, and if it's not against the sacraments, and if it's not something that is theologically wrong or incorrect, even a practice, if the practice is not wrong and incorrect, and we could use it to bring people to Christ or to take Christ to them, in agreement with the church and in agreement with the priest, I think more of those brainstorming servants meetings and conversations need to happen to figure out if there is something we can do differently and maybe more effective, what is it?
You've got a building, I haven't seen it, but find a room, make it a staff room. Whiteboard it, and every week you've spoken to 5, soccer, movies. Start collecting. God forbid, don't have meetings over it. Because we can be caught up in meetings, we're good at that. Get a whiteboard and start workshopping what the kids want and put it up there. And then say, hey, how about you and I, we could take them to squash. Or you and me, we can do a picnic. And work and get it moving. Because why this is not relevant, because for 6 days out of 7, they do other things. We have to get Christ into the other days, into their lives. And their lives look like this. There's a profile. I mean, pick a page and say, hey, what does that service do? And we'll explain it. We have to be thinking of outside the box now. And I'm not saying it's easy. 5 minutes, we've got 5 minutes. Yes. Okay.
Just listening to information, I have also, I think one of the reasons that teenagers and youth don't like to conferences like more often and lack of appropriate company, because some of them like feel alone and they don't have appropriate friends or close friends to them. For example, I have a Filipino friend. Her son, like 18, 17 or 18 years old. He has been, he gone through depression because he has no friends. He's always alone, and he has to follow up with consultant to take medicine to feel better of this depression because of lack of company. And so
Mother Teresa actually said we don't have poor, we have loneliness in the West.
Yes. Yeah. So I think one of the solutions maybe we can put like workshop or teamwork for youth, for teenagers together to get them to be involved with each other more.
Yes, and again, because you don't have a big community, probably every one of these young people have other friends, like New Zealander friends. Invite them. What are you scared of? You think God can't cope with the leper? He can't cope with the Samaritan woman? He can't cope with Jonah? Bring them, bring your friends, not here. Find a place and say, we're doing this for you. Bring whoever you want. And actually, they're going to be like, what, are you kidding? You know the reaction, right? Why are they having that reaction? Because they know that we discriminate. They know that. Just like the woman that rang me. Oh, it's the dirty Australians that corrupt our kids. That's nonsense. It's our responsibility that our young people become salt and light to the world. If they don't shine, the world goes dark. So bring your broken and bring your sick and bring your fill in the gap. Come to us. We won't even ask you questions. Let's just have a cup of tea. That's it. Make a cup of coffee. Make a cafe. Invest in a barista course for every kid that's unemployed. I mean, the sky's the limit. We don't have any money in the bank because we come up with cafe ideas all the time. So, oh yeah, what was the last one? One kid said, I want to be a gym instructor. Yep. We'll pay for that. We make a phone call really quick. We need $50 a month.
And he didn't go to
Cancelled it after a month. But we were true to our word. We heard him, and he had the docket, the receipt in his hand. We mean business. We're not joking. You want to do that? Sure, we'll do that. Again,
You mentioned that there's things we cannot change, and there's things we can change. So can you give us examples of what we can change, or we can do different, or we can add to our service?
Yes, I was thinking of you straight away. So Kiro and Tina are part of an outreach church in Sydney. They're peculiar.
So my daughter just started at St. Luke's. She's now. Can you explain it? I'm sorry. Can you explain the deaconesses? So I don't say the wrong name.
Yeah, so myself, deaconess. So we, just to give you a bit of background, they started a missionary church in Sydney called St. Luke's Orthodox Church, and it's Coptic church, Coptic priests, strictly for non-Egyptians. So for anyone that's married, a non-Egyptian, or for anyone that wants to bring a non-Egyptian to the church.
I was told I was too Coptic. Okay?
Yeah, she was.
She's too Muslim to come.
I don't know if we can have you, Doug, I'm sorry.
But it's very, very specific, and it's very controversial because, the priests are strict with that, where if Egyptians come, they ask why you've got your church, we explain the mission of the church, and unless they're there for a specific service or a specific reason, it's strictly for non-Egyptians. So this is a missionary church. We serve there, we're Muslim, but we serve in the church as part of the servants group, and that's the background of St. Luke's.
So unfortunately, it's great. That's when I started realizing there's so much that we do because of culture, and that has no dogma attached to it, but we say, for example, and this makes a really big deal, the men are going to have communion first, or I guess the men first, and then the women and children go next after. And when an Australian sees this, other than Debbie, when other Aussies see this, they think, this is so rude. Like, why would, they've got women and children. And I say, why do we give the men first? Because they what?
Guts.
They're God?
Guts.
Oh, their guts, yes.
I know, I think they're just hungry, yes. They want
I think
food.
their guts are a big deal. So then we started saying, okay, you know what? We're going to sit together and we're just going to go together. That's a really small change, but I was speaking to this came because actually I was speaking to a Macedonian hairdresser who's Orthodox, and she said to me, can you believe my church, because she doesn't go, she only goes Easter and Christmas, can you believe that the priest comes and he gives that stuff, he gives it to all the men first? And I said, oh yeah, that can't be good. And then I started thinking, what messages are we sending? My daughter then now goes and sits in the front with all the deacons and all the women, so that we have this one, we have a choir, as in, not a choir, not a choir.
Of course.
Still very deep. Yeah. So the men don't get the microphones like that. They don't. They're normal. They don't need microphones because they're men and they're loud. The women get the microphones so that we can balance, so we're all heard at the same time. And my daughter actually sings, and she knows, she goes, I gotta go on time, I have to sing. And she's so happy. She goes to another church, she goes to the Coptic school where she does a very traditional mass, and the girls are scattered throughout the pews while all the boys are deepening here. So she says, Mom, why is it so different? And I said, we're catching up, just small steps. So that's a really big deal, that those are things that I think we need to just review and say, why do we do what we do? What is for our benefit? And what small changes can we make to better connect? And I didn't know what I was missing until I had it, if that makes sense. So small things like that make me feel a lot better. And I'm born and bred in a church, very Coptic, through and through, must, everything. But these changes make a big deal for myself.
And Amber Angelos in London started a service exactly like this. The girls actually don't have a ton yet, but they have like a, yes, and they're here and he gives them the microphone and the dads. I've seen them myself and they have a purpose and it's like, oh, we can do something. It's purpose. And our kids are not just Egyptian with that culture of men and women, that tough Saidi stuff. No disrespect. But they're New Zealanders. Pardon me? Someone called Majdi. 40 سنة of that. So in New Zealand, when they go to school, they're lining up with girls and boys. There's equality out there. And they come here, whether it's right or wrong, it's not doctrine. And they see it as wrong.
Just to answer the question, just some practical examples. So some things we do. So for example, Monday night, we've got our Connect meeting, what we call a Connect meeting. So a whole bunch of youth, old and young people come to this meeting. We acknowledge a lot of our people, this cohort of people that attend Exodus, they won't connect with everyone sitting down, opening the Bible, doing a Bible study, reading a passage, explaining the Bible study. They don't connect with that. That's the group of people that we. So Connect meeting, for example, we do it differently. We have a meeting, we get a guest speaker in on a topic or an issue, and strategically, the servants, the discussion and the influence is underpinned with biblical beliefs, Christianity, Coptic Church, everything. So the discussion and the influence or the perspective that's given by the specific servants that are chosen to attend certain topics and that is done very strategically. Thursday night, we do art class, art therapy. So we do jewelry making. So they come in and we got all the equipment to make jewelry, proper jewelry, rings and necklaces, gold, silver, bronze, titanium, whatever it is. And we do what we call art therapy, art class. And again, we teach them how to make crosses, cross rings. We teach them how to make cross rings. So again, we feature what we want to get through. We just do it in a different way. And different other examples of we try to do things differently in a way that they connect with. We've got a music studio. So a lot of the guys that come in, we've got recording equipment. They love rap music and they like singing. They think they're some hip hop star. So we facilitated that, we accommodated that. We spent a lot of money on music equipment and then we bring them in. And then, conversations around hymnology and hymns in the church or Christian music in general, or you've got a really nice voice, can you record this? Or we've got another songwriter that wants to write a song, you've got a nice voice, could you be a part of the singing of that song? And maybe Christian lyrics or a Christian themed song. So,
And they do come in with the rap and there's a lot of swearing. So we don't get shocked. I don't think we've been shocked for a long time. And we might acknowledge that they have a gift. Gosh, you can write. Gosh, you can sing. And then the first song that comes off the track, it's like, oh my, you go, oh, every second word's F. And then we might say, which is not Christian teaching, but we'll go, hey, can you say that another way? Can you tell us that story in another way? And you cut down the F words by 50%. And the next week, let's try it again. And it's a bit sly. What we do, we can talk about anything.
It's very sly and very dishonest.
Yes, but we're very good at it.
I just want to say one thing about what Dina just mentioned about boys or girls have communion first. I believe the point is not who's going to have communion first.
That's why
I'm going to come here. So if the love there, we're going to take things as it. Let us just imagine the church changes away and now we allow girls to have communion first. Then find some boys, one day they're going to come and say, why girls have communion first? Little boys. So it's not the point who's going to be first, because always you can find the other party complain, So it's not that we're doing something wrong by allowing men because, that by biblically or traditionally, maybe inherited from the Islamic culture, that the man is superior or something like that. But when you think about it, it's not the point like that. For me to understand my role in the church as a lady or a man or whatever, you participate in Eucharist, the woman is sanctified in the man. There is no difference between both of them. When we look at it from a spiritual point of view, like for example in our church, Many wives sit next to her husband. When I'm gonna say, excuse me, wait for your turn, you go to the woman. We don't do that. So little girl goes there, parents, they have communion. We open with this one. But the point is not we're gonna have revolution and we're gonna say, okay, our church is, 2,000 years old or whatever, we have to try. Because if I'm gonna allow that and that and that, bit by bit, you know what? Okay, the girls is here, we're not against this, that's fantastic. But when we're gonna stop? Why they're not gonna be afraid? Why they're not gonna serve in the altar? You know what I mean? So sometimes making education, spirituality of the actual ritual to accept our role, that all those priests come from women, all these deacons come from women, and we all participate in it. Doesn't matter who's standing here or there, we all, as a congregation, the response for the congregation, not who's gonna hold the microphone. Microphone, it should be for a deacon to start like this one. Just to start on. He shouldn't put the microphone all the time. He only stops. Then he put it back. If he found the congregation is stumbling, then he adjusted it. But for a deacon to keep holding it, wrong. It is not the correct way of service. A leader starts, then he goes back to the microphone when the leader straight. I think as a congregation they say in harmony, no problem. That's just my point, you know. We don't against any change, but the change can come.
But see, on that topic, if we said in the youth meeting we're going to have a talk about that, they probably won't come. If you changed it and called it, let's talk about gender. Oh, what do you mean? And then we can start talking about equality in Christ, but different roles. But it's how we sell it. We have to be better at that marketing.
And that example is always very specific to a cohort of people. So that's in a missionary church. A lot of Australian and non-Egyptian women asking and sort of picking a bone as to why we're favouring men and not women, and and things like that. Like again, it's about a discussion and the need for that specific group of people. In a traditional Coptic church, where men's roles and women's roles are not an obstacle and it's a non-issue and it's nothing that's even questioned, and it's a traditional Coptic Orthodox church, something like that doesn't need to be brought up and doesn't need to be questioned. So it's, again, when there's a gap or when there's an issue, it's about having a discussion. And on your point, Abuna, which I completely agree, and that's what we said in the beginning, we need to differentiate what we can play around with and what we can't. Something like for a missionary church, we agreed with the approval of the bishop and the priest is that something like men and women together and having communion together, that's something we can play around with. Culturally, we can, no problem. Women priests is something we can definitely not touch and not play around with, and that will never be a discussion. So, yeah.
Yeah, thanks. So I was just going to say, when I'm done, I was just going to say it's all about the audience, so that's our audience. When I sat there for how many years I sat there, I didn't think about it. I didn't consider it. But I know now the audience would very much consider that. So it's all about your audience, whatever means something to you.
The other thing, Tina? Okay, I think that the more important thing that who has communion first, which I got from Tina's example.
It's together. We do it together. So no one having any.
It doesn't matter. I'm not too concerned about that. What the important thing I think that you touched on, rather than who has communion first, is having a role in the church, and that's critical for young children especially. If they are not engaged, what Alfred said will happen eventually. When they grow up, church is Sunday and that's it. I don't want anything else. But I have no role to play, right? So having a role is essential.
And with that, role and ownership. If you give someone ownership of something, they own it. They're responsible for it. They're accountable for it. And it's a projection of their work or their effort. And they own it. They'll be much more inclined to be involved than if they're just an external attendee. They come, they attend the services that are put on for them by people, and then they take themselves and leave, and then they come back the next week. So along with roles, 100%, and giving the young people involvement and ownership, take charge. This is your responsibility. You have a skill, you have a talent, you're going to be responsible for this aspect of this service in the church. And let's discuss and let's meet about it. Tell me what you need to support, how many people do you need with you, how much money do you need, when would be the best time to do it. But giving them ownership and responsibility makes a big difference.
question.
Okay. So you mentioned at the beginning about traditions that we should change or that we can have the ability to change because they're just cultural, they're not actually a dogma or they're not something that we're going to go against our beliefs and things that we can't change. Something as simple as the hujjah, the communion first or together or whatnot, that's something that we can change, right? In saying that, it's teaching our kids or teaching the young ones who didn't grow up in our culture as immense as we did, is the inclusion part. It's that we're together, that there's no separation, there's no hierarchy in terms of boys better than girls. We get it. We as adults or as like people who have grown up, we get it. Our kids see this and start to complain or start to see it as an off thing because they grew up in a New Zealand culture where this doesn't happen. And you're having to go back and lecture them about, no, the church doesn't mean it that way. Why do you do that? Why do you have to teach them when it could just be an inclusion? Of course they're not going to become Christians, you can have that discussion. But giving them a responsibility to the hymns makes them feel like they need to learn it. While we often find that a hand class, boys are the ones they attend because they've got a responsibility.
So can I just add just again a bit of context? I think the important point is the need. This was identified as an obstacle for our mission church.
Stumbling block for our congregation, and which are Australian. So I think it's not a stumbling block in Egypt. It's not. It's fine. It's fine. But I think once what we're doing, we have to kind of identify the stumbling blocks within our community.
The funny thing, the communion, the church service that we have at Exodus, it's standard. Like we don't do that. The guys go first, and we're considered radical. And I'm like, no. You have to do it like that.
But it's not a stumbling block. So the
Yeah.
girls that attended are Coptic girls. They attend, and it wasn't raised as an issue. So we didn't even think. That didn't even come up in a discussion about men and women. It wasn't a thing. So I get the context and the people, the cohort is what's important. That was a stumbling block where we had Australian women or non-Egyptian women, seeing our church as sexist, as chauvinistic, as, why we prioritize males and, and that became, if that's going to be something that's going to stop someone from coming to church and having communion, then let's have a discussion. The outcome may be, no, we can't change this for whatever reason. No problem. But it prompted a discussion and it prompted, workshopping and thinking about, this is a stumbling block, how can we solve the problem? The answer we came up with in our church for our issue is it's not a problem to move things around like that. It's going to cause a lot less problems and it's going to be much easier to answer to these people about what we do. That's not a problem. Let's change that.
There was one question. Do you want me to address it because it's about dating? Yes? This is a tribe. It's heavy on the Egyptian culture and faith. But your kids are also New Zealanders. Kiwis, yes. So you migrated here for safety and freedom of religion and freedom of education. It came with a price. You had the choice of staying home, oppression, tough life, and this is why people migrate. And God allowed the oppression there so that you pack your bags and come here. So yes, you came for the good life and all the rest of it. But you also came for people like me. God had a plan. And that plan is in your children still. So what do we do when they come home and they say, hey, we're not Egyptian, we're Kiwis, and all my mates are dating girls? Identity is, we have to have that discussion with our young people. I can assure you there are Australians and Kiwis who are more strict in this particular point than we are. There are Christian schools out there with Christian kids that are not Coptic Egyptian that do not date. Go talk to them. Let's cut this discussion down. Go and visit them and talk to them and say, what are you doing about this? What's your program? How do you talk to your kids about that? Because we're in the same boat. Because your kids are saying, you're old-fashioned, you're Egyptian, and having a crack at the church, when in fact they have a problem with Christ's teachings. And they don't know that. And it would do you well, and I would encourage that, and it's radical. I would find a Christian school that is strict, and I would invite their youth meeting to join your youth meeting, and more than likely their young people are quite outspoken, and they will stand here and talk about purity better than any of us. And your young people will sit there and say, they're not Copts, they're not Orthodox, they're not Egyptians. How come they think like that? And let it hang. Let them think, oh my goodness, there's guys like us, like our parents, but they're not old-fashioned. They're Kiwis. They're there. I'm sure we can find those places for you. We can talk
And something like that is an example of doing it differently. Typically, we'd have a Sunday school servant of Egyptian background coming up and talking to the youth about no dating, no sex before marriage, haram, we don't do that, outside does that, we don't do that. And the young people, yeah, thanks, you're old-fashioned, yeah. And the same message being given by someone completely, exact same message, same words.
Their peers.
Someone their age, someone from a different culture, they can't say you don't get it. They can't say you're old-fashioned. They can't say you grew up in 1950s Egypt and things have changed now. They can't say that. It's the exact same message. And that's an example of how maybe some things we can do differently, different to how we usually, or, automatically our brain goes to, this servant give this talk. So maybe, again, all it takes is a brainstorming, workshopping session. This is the topic we want to discuss. Who can we poach from wherever appropriate, nothing wrong being said, but who can we get that will get this message across in a way that we haven't done it before?
Our email and our website are on those documents. Send us questions and we can send you ideas. Some work, some don't. Some work there, some work here, we don't know. But at least we're thinking before we lose too many more. Big top.
Thank you very much, Debbie, and thank you very much, Kira, thank you very much, Tina. I'm sure that you open a lot of discussion, and I'm sure that a lot of things maybe we can start to apply, and maybe bit by bit we're going to find our church really having more change in the right way, so we can all, enjoy serving and see Christ manifest in the life of all our children. I spoke to Debbie and Kiro. So for the meeting for high school, junior and senior, I spoke to them what is the correct way. Should we attend as servants or even with me? Because we need them to open their heart. So we don't want them to feel shy to open their heart or anything. We're going to close the microphone at the back. So we're going to leave junior high school and senior high school to sit with Kiro, Tina, and Debbie. So we can ask a question without feeling pressure from Abuna or servants or any one of us. So we need the gain at the end. So we need them to open with open heart, not to feel shy, that we can listen to them. So we're going to close all microphone in baptism room, in crying room, in the other building, and we're going to give them the session as soon as we finish Vesper, as fast as today's Vesper. I want it to finish in 15 minutes because we will spend more time. And the discussion is amazing, but in really back, I'm sure that we open out the discussion. Yeah, we're having many sessions coming. We keep canceling. So we need the purpose of this visit by the high school. So we're just having extra session. We have no time to start.
Yesterday did something very awesome about the website, and they can send their questions.
Yeah, because I don't want anyone to be inside. We can have paper with Teddy, is this team available?
Yeah, SLI.do, yeah.
Because we don't want any servants to be here, that's all.
Yeah.
We don't want any servants to be here, that's the only thing. So maybe we can post people or something like that.
Yeah, so high school can post anonymous questions on a website from their phone.
Okay, you're gonna
So,
explain that in the beginning of Teddy?
yeah, sure, I can hear that.
So we're gonna pray the night, this that entry of the Lord to the temple, joyful tune. We are so happy to have Exodus among us and it was a beautiful day to pray. Let us enjoy that. If you can please just move that piano, that one here, just put it aside please. Just that one only. Leave that one as it is.